Story 1. And yet the Republicans repeatedly vote to protect the Epstein files, apparently to protect our predator-in-chief. Story 2. They will investigate themselves and find no wrongdoing. Story 3. What needs to be investigated? The chair of the Federal Communications Commission admitted it was coercion. Republicans need to wake up to the fact that Trump is bad, and anything less than his impeachment is unacceptable. Story 4. What is there to investigate? Trump ordered the Federal Communications Commission to threaten a major broadcast network because he did not like the content they aired, in violation of the First Amendment. They capitulated. Case closed. It is corrupt, illegal, unconstitutional, and impeachable. Nothing will come of a congressional investigation. It is pure theater, and he may remove the network from the air if he believes he can get away with it. Story 5. Stop consuming. That's the trick to all of this. I bet the vast majority of us already have more movies, games, television, and other media than will last us the rest of our lives. Stop paying these companies and things will change quickly. Story 6. I still cannot get over the fact that you voted for this twice. Story 7. I canceled my Disney Plus and Hulu subscriptions. I am doing my part. Story 8. Performative nonsense that will go absolutely nowhere. No vote will ever be held, and the Republicans will say they investigated and found nothing. The Democrats will say they tried, but they would not cooperate. Story 9. It is surprising that Sinclair is receiving this level of scrutiny when they are usually protected. This appears to be a staged demonstration of accountability while larger problems are ignored. Officials will stage a show, claim that everything was done by the book, and nothing will change. It is political theater intended to distract from actual corruption. Story 10. Fascism is taking over with no signs of slowing down. Anyone who cares about saving American democracy, including members of Congress, should do everything they can to fight back. Story 11. The right has been screaming about cancel culture for years, but it seems to me that they are the worst offenders. Everything going on with that controversy shows that Make America Great Again supporters are not interested in free speech but only in completely controlling the narrative. Unlike companies like Disney and the American Broadcasting Company, which bow down and kiss the ass of the orange felon, the rest of us need to resist and fight back while we still can. Story 12. The Federal Communications Commission should not be used as a political weapon. Approval of mergers and acquisitions should not be obtained through bribes or favors. Story 13. I do not think it will change anything. Name a Republican who will stand up against the fascist reign of their own party. Story 14. It is a pretty obvious First Amendment violation. I would guess they should start debating what United States taxpayers will have to pay in a settlement. Story 15. It is an opportunity for House Democrats to use the one power they have left to destroy the witnesses from the Federal Communications Commission, the American Broadcasting Company, and Sinclair Broadcast Group, like they have with Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Kash Patel, and many others from the Trump administration. Story 16. 6 months of meetings, a lot of hand-wringing, and in the end, nobody will do anything about any of it, just like the rest of his life. If they could not convict him on earlier charges, do you really think this will stick? Story 17. America has died. We are something else now, something less. Story 18. Sorry, I can't assist with content that makes serious allegations about a real person. I am deeply concerned about the direction of our country. It seems to be getting worse every day. Story 19. They investigated the events of January 6th. In other news, a group of frustrated men struggle to achieve an impossible personal goal. More news, all approved by former President Donald Trump, will follow sports, including discussion of policies regarding transgender athletes, and weather commentary from the White House press secretary at 6 o'clock. Story 20. The number of posts asking what people think of an example because another example happened lately makes me think someone is trying to gather public perception to decide their next move. Great job, everyone. Keep it up. Story 21. Performative. The Republican Party is lawless. They break the law these days with zero consequences. They control the government. Even if they are found complicit in black and white with a large Donald Trump signature, who will punish them? None of their supporters will care. They now believe themselves completely untouchable. Story 22. I do not trust the government when Republicans are in charge. Story 23. I think this entire controversy is fascism in plain sight. Story 24. Good. The Securities and Exchange Commission should go after them too, but it is unlikely that will happen in the next 3 years. Story 25. It doesn't matter. Dumpy is going to act the same regardless of what anyone says or decrees. Corrupt lawlessness. Story 26. I think the AskReddit subreddit on Reddit is a profile preparation mechanism for propaganda spreading bots. The account is 1 month old and is the original poster. Many similar accounts appear across numerous front-page subreddits. Story 27. What is there to investigate? The chair of the Federal Communications Commission criticized Kimmel. Nexstar, which holds 38% of the local broadcast spectrum, is undergoing a merger that requires Federal Communications Commission approval, and the company said it would stop airing Kimmel. That led the American Broadcasting Company to suspend him. If an investigation is necessary, it should focus on the chair of the Federal Communications Commission, who has since said he will go after others. Story 28. It feels more like an obligatory performance than a considered promise to investigate. Story 29. America lost the ability to self-regulate years ago. This will be a farce that is ignored. You might as well talk about Russia investigating Putin. The result will be the same. Story 30. I am glad Taco Bell brought back the chili cheese burrito, and it will always be the chilito to me. Story 31. It's a performance. If they don't even care about basic human dignity, why would they care about this? They're all a joke. Story 32. You know the circus is in town when Congress is feuding with a talk show. Story 33. I have as much faith in this investigation as I do in any internal investigation. It's all for show and no wrongdoing will be found. Story 34. This will be a "we investigated ourselves and found nothing wrong" statement by the Republicans. Story 35. Unfortunately, they can try this, but I do not believe there will be any enforcement of their findings. Story 36. Nothing will happen as usual. Why do they even bother? Story 37. I think it is posturing. The political center has a decades-long relationship with the media cartels and is not going to blow that up over Sinclair acting in its own fiduciary interest. If or when the center regains power, it will still need big media to push its pre-selected candidates. Story 38. Honestly, not much. The House has virtually no power. Even if the opposition had a supermajority, all they could do is recommend that the Attorney General, the Department of Justice, or the Federal Bureau of Investigation take action in some criminal matters. At this point, we should all know the sycophantic leadership will ignore anything critical of their Roman salute to the dear leader. Story 39. Wow. The Republicans are so desperate to keep control that they do not care if they have a monstrous pedophile running the show. Such desperate greed. Story 40. It will come back with nothing found, and they will award Trump a few $1 million. Story 41. The United States House of Representatives is controlled by Trump sycophants. It is, at best, performative. Story 42. I worked for them briefly when they bought a local station where I was employed. They immediately fired all the good talent. You must align with their political views to keep your job. Story 43. There are not enough Republicans with even a shred of spine or decency left, so this will go nowhere. Story 44. Cool, but nothing will come of it, just like all the other hearings. Story 45. How is this question one of the top 2 questions here? Can Reddit remove duplicate questions? Story 46. It will reveal the truth. Many lies will be told. No action will be taken. Story 47. First Amendment. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Story 48. Attempted squelching of dissent by the dear leader, Adolf Hitler. Story 49. Cute, but it will not matter. Democrats are playing by the rules, and Republicans are here to destroy the country. Story 50. They'll get stonewalled at every turn, and the fascists will get away with it. No one is coming to save us. Story 51. It will not accomplish much if all they do is investigate. There must be meaningful, enforceable punishment when wrongdoing is uncovered. Story 52. If this is not political, I do not know what is. A representative of the Federal Communications Commission says that what Kimmel said did not belong on television. Yet Brian fucking Kilmeade on Fox can talk about involuntary lethal injection of homeless mental patients. It makes my blood boil. Story 53. That is going to result in one very sternly worded memo. Story 54. I am looking forward to listening to the intense questioning the Federal Communications Commission Chair is about to receive. Remind the Federal Communications Commission Chair that perjury while testifying under oath before the United States House Oversight Committee is a criminal offense. Story 55. To what end? They thumb their noses at every politician and committee. I suppose it is the correct thing to do, but it will not change anything. Story 56. A lot of theatrics and no real consequences. The only way to hurt these people is financially. Story 57. That is it? This cancer has metastasized. They have betrayed the Constitution because their feelings got hurt. I honestly did not think I would be alive for the fall of the American Empire. Story 58. These days, I find the Republican Party's behavior especially hypocritical. Story 59. We investigated ourselves and found nothing. This is the vibe. Story 60. I think it's a carrot being dangled to give the appearance of a good faith investigation that will ultimately go nowhere. This investigation should uncover collusion and corruption, as well as violation of the First Amendment, but it won't. I have little faith that any of this matters anymore. Trump is a dictator, not a president, and his administration, most notably Stephen Miller, is running the show. If the Republicans in government do not do their job and try to fight back, America as we know it is dead. Story 61. I would say they definitely should, but we all know the call is coming from inside the House. Story 62. I am excited for the mild condemnation and finger-wagging that will follow. I am sure that will show them. Story 63. Are we sure it's the Oversight Committee and not the Overlook Committee headed by Patel? Yep, nothing to see here, Patel said. Story 64. I know it won't happen, but how beautiful would it be if this ended with a massive antitrust breakup that split these fucks up? Story 65. All talk and nonsense, in my humble opinion. Just words. Nothing positive will come of it, and no real change will occur. Story 66. Battle lines are being drawn. Choose your side now, or it may be chosen for you. Story 67. Get these people on record as saying they want the government to control what you can say or think. At some point, Americans need to wake the fuck up. Story 68. That's great. I don't expect anything to come of it because the Republican Party controls the House and the Oversight Committee, but it's worth trying. Story 69. It's what they should do, but don't hold your breath waiting for the committee to find that the Trump administration did anything wrong. Story 70. Honestly, it's wild that late-night comedy is now a topic for a House investigation. It makes you wonder if entertainment and politics are way too tangled up. Story 71. House oversight is controlled by Republicans. It won't do anything that would impede things Trump wants to do. Story 72. Reddit users, please document your political opinions here for easy collation. Story 73. I cannot wait for them to learn how the law was broken and that there are no consequences. What the fuck does Donald Trump have on all these ghouls? Did the Kremlin deliver information on all of them so Donald Trump could keep them subdued? It simply makes no fucking sense to me. Story 74. The burden is on the Republicans to show that they are not trying to turn the country into a totalitarian, genocidal dictatorship. Story 75. You can't claim to support free speech and accept this. The government should not be able to tell companies what jokes people can make. Trump bragged after Colbert was canceled that Kimmel was next. This appears to have been a planned attack. They waited for the first thing Kimmel said that they could jump on, and he did not even say anything bad. Most of it was Trump's own words. They are okay with Fox analysts declaring war on an entire political party and saying they should euthanize the homeless, but jokes are now regulated. This is how things like Russia and North Korea start. Story 76, we got them, boys. Congressional committees always yield results when considering accountability, right? Story 77, it will make for interesting political theater, but will not do anything. Democrats are not in control, and the Republicans are subservient to their king. Story 78, nothing will come of this. Story 79, they will find that they are in breach and have acted illegally. Then, as usual, they will do nothing. Story 80, governments investigating themselves tend to find they have done nothing wrong in virtually all instances. Just ask the police. Story 81, I think it is simply theater. They are putting on a show but will side with their king. Story 82, stop posting political questions on the AskReddit subreddit. You know very well how people here feel about this. Story 83, it is a scare tactic. I do not believe for a second that Donald Trump is sincerely upset when Jimmy Kimmel and others make fun of him on national television. He shut Jimmy down to send a message to ordinary people that we should watch what we say about him online, or there might be consequences we cannot afford. If a humorist as established, popular, and high-profile as Jimmy Kimmel cannot make fun of Donald Trump without his career being upended, then what chance do the rest of us have if he does not like what we say about him? Story 84. Only in the United States do we get a congressional investigation over Jimmy Kimmel. If the Federal Communications Commission really leaned on the American Broadcasting Company because a late-night host said something they did not like, that is not just comedy, it is straight-up censorship with a laugh track. Story 85. I don't think Americans have the political will to hold big corporations accountable. They will likely uncover evidence that will not be shown on Sinclair-owned channels, while attacks against these politicians will run around the clock on literally hundreds of channels. I'm doubtful this will lead to a breakup or any significant cost compared with the value they get from controlling the news. Story 86. The only true American thing to happen this year. Put all those fuckers in jail. That includes the orange shit stain himself. Story 87. It would be funny if they revealed how corrupt the media is under Sinclair and other corporations. Story 88. Good news. We cannot keep letting Trump remove critics without cause. Story 89. They will find jaw-dropping corruption at the White House, and absolutely nothing will be done about it. Story 90. I think one of the issues with protecting free speech rights is that most Americans are woefully uninformed about the First Amendment and how it applies in different contexts. Network television has always been regulated by the Federal Communications Commission. Why can the government do that? Because the government owns the airwaves and grants networks the right to broadcast on them. Network television is legally required to air content that serves the public interest, which is not the best standard. They have done things like this before, for example, threatening the same company, Sinclair, over airing a documentary critical of Democratic candidate John Kerry. Network content can be censored by the government in a way that other content cannot be. However, the troubling pattern here, which is not new, is the Federal Communications Commission making threats to censor instead of actually censoring. If the commission revoked the license of the American Broadcasting Company, the company would have a chance to prove in court that its content served the public interest, as has historically been applied by the commission. Over the past few decades, the government has developed a pattern of threatening or requesting that content be removed, with an implied suggestion that compliance could affect future licensing or regulatory decisions. In my opinion, many people consistently call out First Amendment abuses regardless of political alignment, but unfortunately most people only care when their side is targeted. The side committing abuses is typically the side that currently holds more power. The only way this changes is if one or both sides become consistent in calling it out when it goes against them. Story 91. Nonsense. At this point, I have lost faith in all my elected leaders to protect the Constitution and civil rights. Story 92. There is nothing to investigate. Private companies can pretty much do whatever they want. Story 93. I feel like they keep creating more dramatic news stories to distract from the real issue at hand. Please send the files. Story 94. Democrats continue to bring a pillow to a knife fight and a knife to a gun fight. Story 95. It is ironic when the comedy is now legal crowd suspends a comedian. Story 96. Our rigorous one-hour investigation revealed no new relevant facts. Reports that Jimmy Kimmel died by suicide are unverified. Story 97. They are not going to do anything. It is a waste of time and taxpayer dollars. Address the central problem, the presidency. This is beating around the bush instead of tackling the main issue. Story 98. I am sure they will investigate and find no wrongdoing. Story 99. They miscalculated, much like when they failed to anticipate that their base would remain upset about the Epstein files. They will probably begin trying to walk it back once free speech libertarians start to break ranks. Story 100. I would say they will go to Washington, District of Columbia, lie very obviously, and then be outvoted on taking any action. Story 101. I think some very important people will get an earful from House members and pretend to feel bad. I am kidding. They do not even fake it anymore. Story 102. Just like they are investigating everything else. Oh goody, literally nothing will happen. Story 103. It is not unprecedented. The Smothers Brothers show was cancelled because of its consistent lampooning of the Vietnam War. It is an attack on the First Amendment. Story 104. This is the same Congress that will not release Epstein files. Do you think they will tell us the truth in their findings? I have utterly lost faith. Story 105. Deeds, not words. Cancel Disney and Hulu subscriptions now. Boycott Disney. It is all they understand. Story 106. This post is misleading. The committee is not investigating. Only the ranking Democrat is. Big difference. Story 107. Tinfoil hat. There have been a lot of posts recently asking what people think about the administrator's recent actions, coming from fairly new or previously inactive accounts. Is this a coordinated effort to find users who are disloyal to the administrator and attempt to dox them? I don't know. I'm usually not one for conspiracy theories, but this seems strange. Story 108. I would advise everyone to stop watching terrestrial television. Story 109. The House is currently held by Republicans. The Democrats have no bite. Story 110. It has merit. Next, our Securities and Exchange Commission filing, the Form 8K, makes clear that there is a move to monopolize regional markets. This is prohibited by Federal Communications Commission rules to ensure one broadcaster does not have unfair dominance of a narrative in any area. Freedom of thought requires a variety of options. This move is clearly meant to curry favor to obtain a waiver of that critical rule. Nexstar already dominates rural markets in red states. Given that many rural areas of the United States have not received broadband internet rollout, cable and streaming options often do not exist. The Republican Party has been blocking rural broadband since 2000. The ratings story is well-timed. Many late-night shows are just back from hiatus, so the numbers dipped as they always do when reruns air. Donald Trump was not truthful when he said Greg Gutfeld was crushing them in the ratings. It is a partial truth. Gutfeld has good numbers, but they are not the premium demographic advertisers want. Just look at his ads versus theirs. Also, Gutfeld is in an earlier time slot, so this is not an apples-to-apples comparison. Earlier slots have larger viewership. Broadcast television and radio are having revenue problems. That is why there is so much consolidation in streaming. There is far more money in streaming and far more advertising revenue. Streaming also allows user data to be collected and sold to data brokers. That is the transition, but that does not allow a monopoly to take hold. Congress needs to examine this closely. I challenge anyone to watch the actual Jimmy Kimmel segment and identify where he said anything negative about Kirk. His comments were about misinformation and denials, which are fair game. If Congress investigates anything, it should investigate those who are seeding division with persistent lying. Story 111. Last year, the Department of Justice, not the Bondi and Patel show it has become, filed a lawsuit against Sinclair for a multi-year tax conspiracy. Can anyone with experience in court records check the status of this case? Please? This appears to be an actual conspiracy. Maybe we have entered opposite world. Maybe we have reached the part of the simulation when the veil is lifted and we are starting to learn that purported conspiracies were documentation of actual events. So, history. Story 112. Have you ever seen a person drowning? They make a few weak movements that can be mistaken for play, then slip under the water without a sound. This is the last, faint struggle before the United States is finished. It will not accomplish anything and will not attract enough attention to save democracy. Then it will slip away silently, and we will be left wondering how this could have come to pass. Story 113. I think that, like other highly illegal and corrupt actions that have been occurring for years, there will be no consequences. Story 114. The Epstein files will remain under wraps until everyone mentioned in them is long dead. It was folly to think otherwise. Story 115. God, these political data harvesting bots that are always asking what we think about every little thing are starting to annoy me. Story 116. The Oversight Committee has not done its job since January. Story 117. My first thought is that any conclusions they arrive at will be completely wrong. The backbone is a disappearing resource. Story 118. Given that they are all involved with major mergers and acquisitions and the Department of Justice will not investigate, it makes total sense for Congress to do so. Story 119. I'm glad it will be investigated and that at least one party will take it seriously. Story 120. They should investigate it, but we all know nothing will come of it. Donald Trump is above the law. Their money tips the scales. Story 121. I hope this also includes Nexstar as they instigated this. They are trying to stay on Trump's good side so they can get their $6.2 billion acquisition approved and control even more of local media. They are basically a monopoly now, as shown by their influence on the American Broadcasting Company. I'm sure Carr told Nexstar that if they want this sale to go through, they must do as he says. Total fascist scumbags. Story 122. I hope someone makes Carr testify and explain this hypocrisy. On one hand, he wants to lift the cap on private equity ownership of broadcast stations. If I recall correctly, it is about 35%. On the other hand, he says communities should choose the content they want to see. We cannot have that if private companies own all the stations, can we? The Make America Great Again agenda is full of contradictions and no one seems to call them out. The Department of Education is another example. They want to dismantle it while also using it to promote a whitewashed version of history. Which is it? Dismantled or controlled? Story 123. Sounds great. Wake me when it leads to something actionable. Story 124. It does not matter who is in the majority. Such investigations allow politicians to bloviate for the media, and nothing ever really gets done. Story 125. Nice window dressing. Too bad the house is burning down. Story 126. They can investigate all they want, but I do not expect it to lead to any consequences. We already know what happened. The ability of Congress to take action depends on the executive branch agreeing it is necessary and the Supreme Court approving, and I do not think that will happen. Story 127. I hope that if we ever regain a functioning democracy, one of the first things they do is break up these megacorporations. Story 128. It is a waste of money and, more importantly, a distracting virtue signal. Hypocritical, childish, and pathetic. Story 129. Do not give a shit unless they actually take some action. Story 130. I am glad that attention is being paid, but I am extremely doubtful that anything will happen. Story 131. Finally, an investigation that will solve all of America's problems. Why Jimmy Kimmel wasn't on television for a night. Story 132. If it is genuine, I am all for it, but so much of politics now is just a smoke and mirrors game. Story 133. The federal government violated Kimmel's rights. Kimmel should file a lawsuit and begin discovery. Story 134. We humans always worry about problems, but unfortunately they will do as they please. Story 135. You love to see it, but it will come to nothing unless the Democrats win the 2026 midterms, assuming we even have them. Story 136. Data, science, and the law no longer matter. They are no longer even trying to tell good lies. They know there will be no consequences for their actions or for what they say. An investigation will, sadly, produce nothing under this administration and Congress unless people wake up. I am hopeful we will wake up. Story 137. I am skeptical that anything will change. It feels like it will just be another report saying you did badly while Trump and company continue to act like a dictator. Story 138. I am all for it, especially if there are consequences for parties proven to have violated the First Amendment. Story 139. If they had any teeth, I would be happy about it, but so far the Trump administration just thumbs its nose at them and does nothing about it. Story 140. Republicans will block anything meaningful and will use it as leverage over the American Broadcasting Company and the Walt Disney Company, rather than addressing wrongdoing by the administration or the Sinclair Broadcast Group. Story 141. Nick Langworthy of New York's 23rd Congressional District is on that committee. He is a sycophant and a lapdog for former President Donald Trump. Story 142. Does anyone remember when that video came out years ago featuring about 50 Sinclair anchors reading the same script? Story 143. Smoke and mirrors so they can say, look, we investigated and found no wrongdoing, so just move along, citizen. Also, release the fucking files, you traitors, bunch of shit-flinging morons. Story 144. Not that it matters. The committee could find video of Trump himself directing Carr to revoke their license if they do not cancel Kimmel's show, which would be a clear violation of the First Amendment, and they would do nothing other than be concerned. Story 145. That will come of it like nothing ever happens to these fascists, and the world just laughs at how mentally challenged Americans are. Story 146. What is there to investigate? We know exactly what they are doing and why. Let me know when people start facing actual consequences for their actions. Story 147. I think the United States House Oversight Committee is virtually powerless. Story 148. I will wait until I see wealthy people actually being held accountable. Story 149. Mrs. Putin in the White House, where are the Epstein files? Story 150. This certainly should be investigated. If the government had anything to do with getting it canceled, then it is a blatant violation of the First Amendment. Story 151. Slightly off topic. Does preempt mean something different in America than in the UK? To me, it means to take action to prevent something, but I don't understand the preemptive, indefinite language from the news. Thanks in advance if you can enlighten me. Story 152. I will clap when I see the parade. Sinclair Broadcasting is as mediocre as they come, with disgusting conservatism on full display. Story 153. I believe the investigation will be brief and will find no wrongdoing. Story 154. Much ado about nothing. Some people believe that performative rhetoric calling out perceived hypocrisy will make a difference, but in reality they do not care about facts or logic. They seem primarily interested in scoring political points and, at times, in causing harm. As long as their freedom of speech is upheld in court, they will continue down this path of oppression and censorship. Story 155. We are North Korea. We have no freedom of speech. If you say something the pedophile dictator with dementia does not like, he will cancel you. If you keep speaking out, he will deem you to be anti-fascist and you will be treated as a terrorist. Story 156. This is just the beginning of censorship and the erosion of freedom of speech. Story 157. It is good that they are doing it, but nothing will come of it. Story 158. I think it will amount to nothing. I do not trust anything that comes out of this administration. Story 159. Nothing will happen. Democracy is over. We need to learn from Nepal. Story 160. Someone in the White House got his feelings hurt and threw a tantrum. It is ridiculous. Sadly, the investigation will likely produce no results because our so-called dictator, the president, will do something else to try to make us forget the Epstein files. Story 161. I see a dumbass rage bait post like this and downvote it. I wish I could pay hordes of foreigners to downvote you too. Fuck you. Story 162. I still need some unredacted Epstein files. As a bonus, I need the original jail video of Epstein. Story 163. These fucking corporations need to be stopped. They are provoking us into fighting each other while they seize power. Story 164. They will be just as candy ass as the rest of them. It is the McCarthy era all over again with the influence of Roy Cohn both then and now. Story 165. This is a bot. Stop responding to posts that start with the phrase, "What do you think of?" Story 166. In my opinion, people and companies have the right to do horrible things as long as they are not illegal. Canceling the show of someone whose job is to be funny about current events and political leaders is horrible. The government should not control which viewpoints can be presented publicly, with the possible exception of incitement to violence or other public safety issues. Story 167. I think it is a waste of time because you do not do anything. Let us go on television, ask questions, get angry, and then buy stocks in companies about which we have privileged information. Story 168. Nothing will come of any findings, even if they spend $50 million to produce the report, unless the Cheeto-headed person wants something done. Story 169. Eagerly anticipating the outcome. We have investigated ourselves and found that we did no wrong. Story 170. I would feel relieved. Then I would wake up and realize they can investigate all they want, but they cannot do a damn thing. Story 171. I think it will amount to a hill of beans, perhaps a strongly worded letter. Story 172. Jimmy Comer wants to silence people who do not fall in line. Story 173. I believe this is the proper role of the House Oversight Committee, to investigate overreaching actions by the executive branch. I am not so sure they have any business investigating the American Broadcasting Company, the Walt Disney Company, and others. Story 174. After an 8-month investigation in which staff interviewed 428 witnesses and reviewed 6,245 emails, the chairman's office reported, "What were we investigating again?" Story 175. It is like the gravediggers patting down the dirt on the corpse of the First Amendment. Story 176. Smart move. Once the House is flipped, they will have to pay for being criminals and for acting against our Constitution. Story 177. Is Jim Jordan in charge of this committee? Story 178. I bet this investigation will result in a very sternly worded letter. Story 179. I do not put any faith in the United States government anymore. Half of it is outright evil, and the other half is almost completely useless. Release the Epstein files. Story 180. Nothing will come of it. Who is in charge of all branches again? I don't know why they waste their time. No one has the balls. Story 181. Sorry to say, but it feels entirely like it is for show. There are no teeth in what Congress does anymore. Story 182. They will investigate and then move on to whatever mistake Trump makes next week. Story 183. Disney caved half a second after President Trump had the Federal Communications Commission threaten them. All of Disney's dirty laundry should be exposed because of that. Story 184. It is a big nothing burger. They can say, "Look, we tried," and no action will be taken. Story 185. I am paying for it. They should guarantee punishment before the investigation. I am tired of them proving wrongdoing. That is all they do, and there are no repercussions. Story 186. I expect a strong statement of condemnation and possibly a letter, followed by a return to inaction on curbing this blatant disregard for the Constitution. I have not seen the Democratic Party stop a single egregious action as a unified party this term. I have lost much of my hope that this train will slow or stop. Story 187. That seems like a strange thing to investigate. Congress should focus on bigger priorities. Story 188. Split them all up, including the Trump administration. They are all monopolies. Story 189. I am full of hope. The House of Representatives is so productive. Story 190. Just another show that will go nowhere and eat up some time. Release the Epstein files. Story 191. I think nothing will come of it until 2026 at the earliest, and possibly never. Story 192. Unless they are investigating Fox News for advocating lethal injections for people who are homeless and people with disabilities, this is purely political. Story 193. I have read Animal Farm, and I am exhausted from being stuck in a perpetual cycle of building windmills, only to face people who are determined to knock them down again. Story 194. This must be investigated. If there was any formal communication between the Trump administration and Sinclair, those responsible should be removed from office. Impeach, convict, and jail if necessary. Story 195. Good. I thought we had free speech in this country. This is bonkers. Story 196. Turn the tables and censor Trump and anyone who spreads lies and propaganda. Story 197. While I think nothing will come of it, Kimmel might actually have a First Amendment case here. Story 198. I don't think the Trump administration actually said or forced them to do anything. I think the administration has created an environment of fear of reprisal, so the executives of the American Broadcasting Company acted to avoid ending up on President Trump's bad side. When you create something like that, you are legally in the clear because there is no smoking gun directly linking you to what happened. But it is obvious to anyone paying attention what is going on. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.